Thank you for having me. I've been doing this now for about 5 years. I'm actually a class action lawyer, and I was getting older and I decided to run for mayor, and I had not a clue about alternative energy, and I actually believed that global warming really was just a plot of the third world, to rob us of our competitive capability. Because I live in a very conservative Republican area, and that's what we believed, because that's what we were told. And who had time to look into it? And then I learned what's really happening in the world. And I learned who you are. Imagine where we are right now. Imagine how exciting it is to be us right now. Because for whatever reason, the first time in history of the world, we as a group have been given a charge to save the world. And we all know, almost every single one of us sitting here, that that is really what we are here to do. It is that powerful of a position. Maybe our fathers experienced it in World War II, when this huge evil was coming down, and they were charged with saving the planet from that. What we are saving the world from is far worse. Far, far worse. And it's much more difficult because they can't see it. But what we have to stay totally focused on is what we have to do is we have to reach out farther than we can see, because it is not us who will pay the price. It is them. And the quality of their life, or whether they even have a life, we are determining now. And it may already be too late. But that is how close we are to determining their future. And the reason it's so hard, and the reason the world has taken so long, a lot of good cognitive science out there, it's because we can't see it. Human beings are extremely good at threat assessment. We do that better than any species. We assess threats and respond to it. But we have to see it. And we cannot see this. Imagine for a moment that instead of global warming or climate change, we were talking about way out there is an asteroid. And 98% of the astrophysicists and 98% of the astronomers believe it is on a collision course. And when it lands, it will be horrible. We don't know how horrible, but it will be horrible. Horrors we have yet to imagine. What would we be doing? The world's leaders would come together. We would be building whatever we needed to build to divert the course of that asteroid. Any doubt about that? Is there one person that has any doubt about that? 98% of the world's scientists that are involved in climate tell us this is coming. It's already upon us. We just can't see it. And so we have millions of people denying it. You'll notice I started this out with telling you what heroes you were, right? That was by design. People cannot hear us if we start out negative. I took this course. This is a great time to be alive, because you can go on the internet, you can take courses from the best there is, the best professors out there, and it's free. I mean, who ever heard of such a thing? It's absolutely free. And they've designed it in such a way, they took video game technology. Why do our kids get addicted to video games? Okay, why do I get addicted to video games? It's because you get a dopamine surge every time you get it right, right? It's challenging, it's hard, and it steps you up levels, and you get this little dopamine surge. It's a little jolt. So they've taken that neuroscience and they put it into university courses. Every 10 minutes, you got to take a test. And it's not a very hard test. And you get your little jolt, and you go on for the next 10 minutes. One time I sat there for 6 hours. I mean, they had me. Why is that important to us? It's because most of us in this room have limited abilities to persuade. It's because there's a science to us. You know, we can build buildings. We can do scientific things. But how many other lawyers are in the room? Not too many of us. You know? The teachers know how to do this. Guess what? We no longer have the luxury of that. We no longer have the luxury of living in our own world because there's not too many of us that know what's coming. You can learn how to persuade people very quickly now. That's a course I think everybody should take. You start people out positive, and then you tell them the bad news. You know, I took that course. I'm still a trial lawyer. I took that course and tried a case. It was like, wow. I was 10 times the lawyer. And all I did was talk about their future. You know, what's on your bucket list, you know, when I'm picking the jury. It's just taking them into the future in a positive way. Never talked about the case, never, you know, I did that in the opening. And my wife pointed out, yeah, what you used to do is you used to go, this horrible thing happened to my client, and I want you to give them a bunch of money. And you wondered why they turned their back on you. You know, there was no comfort there. We have to learn how to lead people in the direction away from the Tea Party. And I'm a Republican. I mean, look what's happening to us. You cannot be a hero that's going to save the world without working much harder than you're working today. It is that bad, and there are that few of us. And what's so tragic about it is the science is all on our side. Showtime is doing a 14-hour series on climate change. And they came to Lancaster and had me sit next to the guy from Forbes magazine that's paid by the Koch brothers to say we're all crazy, you know, that it's just man-made. And it was astonishing to me how quickly he crumbled. Because there is no factual support, there's no substance to their argument. And within 10 minutes, he's doing this. You know, he's shaking his finger at me. But yet, knowing all that we know, the problem we have is everybody wants to stay in the comfort zone. I was at Singularity University. It's this thing they have up in Palo Alto about all the tech that's coming, you know, all the great stuff. And one of the guys was saying, you know, we ought to hire all the executives and put 23-year-olds in there because, you know, they understand exponential growth. And I said, that's such, well, you don't need to know what I said. But that's not accurate. You know, what it is executives get there because they have pattern recognition skills. You know, they can recognize patterns, therefore they can predict, so you make them the president, right? All the patterns have changed now, especially in energy. And the reason why Edison is holding on so tight to the old models, and the reason why they think fossil fuel plants are still a good idea, is because that's the models they can succeed with. And it doesn't matter that it might be destroying the earth, because it's just a little bit that, you know, is accumulating, and they're only responsible for this. But we have to understand, it's not out of malice. It's out of them needing to stay where they can succeed, and that's with the pattern recognitions they know. Read that. I don't need to read it to you. That is, do you know how many millions of people believe this guy? You know, they've seen that program he does. He's got this huge following. I mean, you know, he couldn't be wrong. And he actually said that last year. that it's a Chinese plot. You know how many people believe that? Millions. Millions of Americans believe that. It is not the avarice of the few that is dooming this planet. It is the apathy of the many. And that's where we are failing. I do not miss an opportunity to spread this message. Not one. You turn on my Facebook page, every other thing will be global warming. Every other one. What does your Facebook page look like? We are in a race to save the planet. We cannot falter for a second. It has to be every waking moment. It is that serious. Why are they so apathetic? It's a great book. I think everybody ought to read it. He also did a course on Coursera, actually, that he's out of Duke University. He's one of the world's leading, behavior economists. Worth the course. But he talks about this. It's far in the future. That's the perception. Even though Hurricane Sandy, it's still far in the future. There was a 5-mile wide tornado. Was it 5 or 2 miles? I mean, it was so humongously huge. No one had ever seen it before. That was last year. There's a perception that this is something happening in the future. But every day we're learning, no, it may be upon us already. And people are already dying as a result of it. Remember, Hurricane Sandy was a level 1 hurricane. Level 1. Imagine a level 5. Imagine that. New York would have been gone. The idea that it affects others, that really is how people perceive it, is that this isn't going to affect you and I. I love that picture. See how not our problem. Hurricane Sandy again. That's the biggest problem we have, is people's refusal to look at the span. Every time I put something on global warming on my Facebook, some jerk gets up there and says, it was colder last year. It was colder last year in Antarctica. They refuse to look at the trend. So now I always just put that up. First thing that goes up, everything I do, it says in the corner, showing why that doesn't make sense. And we really do have to do it visually. You have to show it to them. You can't talk to them about it. They have to see it, because that's how threat assessment works. It's a visual process. They don't see the individuals who are suffering. That picture is actually a climate change picture. What's happening in many parts of the world is the farms are drying up. It's a slow daily process. The thought is that what's happening in the Middle East, the Arab Spring, was caused by huge population masses moving into the cities, off the farms, because the farms are no longer productive. These are governmental systems that barely worked to begin with, and then you doubled them. They were doomed. And so now you have the government gassing their own people, 30,000 people gassed. This particular picture was in Darfur, which is clearly the result of desertification. Is that how you say it? Desertification, more deserts. The guy who took this picture got back in his Range Rover and took off. And a year later, he committed suicide. He just couldn't bear both the world's condemnation and the fact that he left that child to be eaten by a vulture. We have to get people to recognize that it is happening to real people. And we do that visually. And the idea that it's just a drop in a bucket. That's why I'm so proud of the city I live in, is within 5 years, we've taken that drop and we're turning it into a river.
This small city is California's biggest energy boom town, Lancaster, in California's Mojave Desert. It averages about 300 days per year of the most intense sunlight in the country.
We intend to figure out a way to use it the most efficiently than anywhere in the world.
3 years ago, Mayor Rex Parris set a net zero power goal to harness the energy from the sun and become 100% power independent. Today, the city is halfway there and produces the most solar power per resident in the state.
We would be the deepest well if you were to imagine that was oil. And what's oil but power? And what is solar but power?
How hard has it been to get people on board with solar energy?
The city has just embraced it.
Solar panels are just about everywhere, on downtown rooftops, at schools. Even the baseball stadium can power itself almost entirely by the sun.
They produce about 97% of the energy that's used in those facilities.
Jason Cottle is the deputy city manager and oversaw the installation of more than 6,000 panels in city buildings. The city leases them from a private company.
We paid 10 cents a kilowatt hour.
Okay.
We were getting charged from the utility companies about 18 cents a kilowatt hour. So we saved the difference.
It's made a big difference to the city's budget, saving more than $250,000 each year in energy costs. The mayor plans to save even more.
We will be net zero within the next 3 years, and the goal is eventually this city becomes independent of the grid.
And next year, this city takes another step closer toward its net zero goal, with a new law requiring solar panel installation in every single new home. Brandon Scott, CBS News, Lancaster, California.
How? You know, that was fun. You know, it's national news. The Wall Street Journal was fun. All of it's fun. I mean, you know, I love that light. It's warm, you know, until it's too hot. But it does have a downside. But how easy was it? I mean, how stupid was it? How is it that not every city in America where the sun shines doesn't have that ordinance? You know, there's another, you know, Mayor Lee in San Francisco, an amazing guy, even if he is a Democrat. But energy-wise, he's truly amazing. They had a plan where if you wanted to get to the head of the line on commercial buildings, right, you had to be a LEED building, a gold LEED building. Everybody know what that is? Good. And then everybody wanted to get to the head of the line. So now everybody has to be a gold LEED building. Nobody complained. You know, it didn't change the market because everybody had to do it. You know, maybe rents went up a little bit, but everybody had to do it. Same thing with the panels. The next step is I'm going to make houses, gold LEED houses. And I might get a little heat from that, but maybe not. I'm always surprised what I don't get heat from, you know? I just do it and then wait. And I think one time I got pushed back on something, and you know, I got to admit it was a crazy idea. But the selling point of it was, this is the solar map of the United States. Lancaster is the center of the universe when it comes to solar power. Our latitude, longitude, elevation, air quality, wind is all perfect. You know, the reason why the Middle East is not really the best solar environment is because of the dust storms. It covers the panels. You're always having to clean them. You know, they're having trouble getting past that. We don't have that problem. And why we're the center is because we have the distribution capability. That, you know, interconnect is huge. And that initially, how I got involved was eSolar. eSolar was a company conceived in the mind of Bill Gross. Bill Gross did the pay-per-click, made a fortune, you know, I mean, super genius, does Idea Lab out of Pasadena. Incredibly bright. His wife is brighter than he is, but I don't tell him that. You know, really bright people. And he came up with the idea with the mirrors. We've had mirrors for a long time. You know, make the turbine spin, I mean, heat it up at the boiler and make the turbine spin. It's been around for a long time. But how do you do it cost effectively? You know, they have those huge mirrors, they break, they get dirty, there's huge problems with them. He made little mirrors, and he did it with the software. It was magnificent. You see where they sit? You notice there's no foundation? You just sit it out on the desert. You can put them anywhere. Pull them off the train, open them up like this. It takes 4 or 5 people to do it, but you open them up like this. 3 wrenches is all you need to put it all together. Imagine that, the whole field, 3 wrenches. mirror is small enough, you don't have breakage, you don't have wind problems, all kinds of things. The software is the key because it constantly is changing, regardless of how the earth moves, constantly changing, you know, to make it center it on. He got it down to 14 cents a kilowatt. We heard that he could do this. 14 months from thinking of the idea to us flipping the switch. He was actually going to let me flip the switch, but I thought, you know, it was kind of his idea. So he flipped the switch. 14 months. Now, we got so many roadblocks from Edison. They don't want this. Any Edison people here? Sorry, but it's true. It takes forever, doesn't it? Forever to get an interconnect. And they do it in ways that create obstacles. I mean, this is how, if I want to build a sewer, say I got a company wants to do a factory, got to do a sewer line. Okay, they fund the sewer line. But when the next factory comes on, they got to pay their share, right? So you can fund it, you can finance it. You can get the banks to lend you the money because you know you're getting it back. It's not how you do it with interconnect. Interconnect is you pay it. No, you don't get paid back when people get on it. You pay it. You know what that does to solar energy production? It's a deliberate obstacle. They know it. I met with them. I'm a class action lawyer. They had a bad experience with me once. And so we had this discussion. And they know that, and they do it anyway. We've got to recognize that people are mouthing it, talking it, but they're not walking it. And we have to start raising hell about that. Because this is not about money. This is not about business. This is about whether or not our grandchildren survive. This is the Lex Tesla in A Beautiful Earth. You see Michael over there? They got this great idea. I mean, you can really make this stuff pay. We can now produce kilowatts, 10 cents a kilowatt. The mirror, oh, that was the other thing. The mirrors, 14 cents. Overnight it changed. Price of PV dropped, 67%. Those fields are no longer profitable. We have to be prepared for exponential changes and to be able to respond to those changes in market conditions like we never have before. Overnight, 14 cents became no longer attractive to anybody because now we can do 10 cents and we can lock it in for 20 years. Imagine that. My city, every building, every school, my energy costs are never going to go up 1 cent for 20 years. See the volatility I've gotten rid of? The way we're able to plan now? It doesn't matter to us. We've taken power costs and set it. Now, a lot of people don't want to put these things on their roof because it's a lease. Well, what's going to happen in 20 years? Well, let's talk about that for a second. In 20 years, what are their solar panels worth? Nothing. Are they really going to pay somebody to come get your solar panel? Of course not. You know, it's just a business model. You know, they got to take the lease, they sell it, they make their money. Does everybody have solar panels on their roof? Come on. Of all the places you could be, I mean, it used to be you'd go to a conference if you learned one thing that was really cool, right? No longer the case. Now you can really learn a lot at conferences. You're obviously committed to solar panels. Go back and put some solar panels on your roof. So what they're going to do is they're going to build these solar fields. We're working on the storage, right? Then you build a factory next to it. 0 carbon footprint. Whatever products come out of that factory, 0 carbon footprints. Do you know what people pay for what is essentially a Toyota Corolla, but they call it a Prius? I mean, when you think about it, people want to buy products that aren't destroying this planet. The thing I told Kevin McCarthy, 51% of all Republicans believe industrial waste is causing this planet's climate change. 51% of Republicans. This idea that people don't believe it is not nearly as great as they've sold it to us. But we're making a lot of mistakes. As much as Obama is doing, we're attempting to solve this problem from the centralized government down. Guess what? He doesn't write building permits. I do. And that's where the hang-up is. Every one of you come from towns and cities and have some contact with city officials, don't you? Don't you all know who a council member is and all that? Listen, I know this stuff. The building industry, if a town is growing, they run that council. Whether you know it or not, you do. That council will turn flips for you. And if you're not asking, what are you doing to save the planet? What are your plans to get to net zero? What are your plans to lower the energy use of your city? It's not on their radar screen. It has to come from you. Interestingly enough, the BIA, the Building Industry of America, you know, when I did this thing, I was expecting, you know, maybe I might not be mayor next year. And they did. They came and spoke. And then the spokesperson went to the city manager and said, sorry I had to say that, but I agree with him. Everybody agrees with us. Everybody with half a brain who has studied this at all agrees with us. They actually supported it. They're fine with it. I think they're going to be fine when I make LED lighting a requirement. But it has to come from the city government. And let me explain why. It's the business model. Unbeknownst to most people, most houses are bought by investors for rentals. You can thank Washington in Section 8 for that, and government subsidies. But it's a business. It's not, it used to be the person who bought the house was going to live there for 30 years. That's not your primary buyer anymore. As a result of that, you got to look at how the cost is spread. The solar panels is an example. The landlord doesn't pay the electric bill, right? The renter does. The only way this is going to happen is by ordinances changing, because the business model pushes against it. It has to be built into the cost of the house. Same thing with LED lighting. I switched out all the lights in my house to LED lighting. Do you know how expensive that is? That was a several $1,000 investment for lights. Now, those lights will be shining when they have the wake at the house, when I die. I mean, they never go out. They are a good investment. It's a long-term investment. But who buys the light bulbs in a house? The person who bought the house, not the builder. The builder doesn't want to make that investment. He's okay with it if everybody has to do it. But he cannot compete if he's the only one doing it. That's why it has to be done by ordinances. If you want this planet to have a chance, everyone in this room has got to start pressing on local officials, because I honestly believe that's the only way. You know, we could drop electric usage, but anywhere from 17 to 30%, just by putting the meter inside and make it understandable. And have one other thing. How do you compare to your neighbors? Right? If your neighbors are using more or less. They've done this in Norway, they did it in Denmark, and they did it in Japan. Japan was the first one to do it, a city in Japan. 17 to 30%. That easy. You know, they came through our city and put smart meters on everybody's house on the outside. You know, they knew this. Let's face it, the electric companies make money selling electricity. You could change the business model, you could fancy it up all you want. They want to sell electricity because they're going to retire in 5 years, maybe 10. That's what they're looking at. They are not looking at our grandchildren and some of our children. How easy it is. So BYD, they have this great idea. They got these batteries, got energy storage, they produce ever-ready batteries. All the batteries you've ever used, they probably made, you know, under licensing. Now, they got batteries you could tie to solar panels and use on a house, but they'd never done it, not cost effectively. Any one of us could build a net zero house. but you can't sell it because it costs too much, right? So I went to KB Homes, biggest builder in America, got a meeting with them, and you get to do that stuff when you're mayor. It's great, you know. Like, I want a meeting with you guys. Okay, you know, they have to do it. I got them in a room. I said, build me a house that produces more electricity than it uses. Can't be done. Not affordably. Don't know how. You know, I mean, that's what both companies were telling me. Okay, what do I got to do to get you to try to do it? Well, will you waive permit fees? Yeah, I'll waive permit fees. But the biggest concern they had was, how long will it take to get permitted? How long you want to take? You want to put solar on a house in Lancaster? It's over the counter. Any other city within 70 miles, I don't know what the other places are doing, it takes 3 months. And there's probably going to be a design change. This is not rocket science, you know? This is putting panels on the roof. It should be over the counter, right? But anyway, they're having problems, mainly because, you know, they speak English, these speak Chinese, creates problems. So I'm always on the phone. Hey, where's this? Where's that? You know, like, where are the batteries? You know, I'm impatient. 4 months later, for $20,000 more, we now have houses that produce more electricity than they use. And you can charge the electric car in the garage, $20,000. But the point is, all of that technology is there now, right? Now. We are now able to solve this problem in most parts of America. But the amazing thing how this works and why you really want to get involved in it is this synergy takes over. And I'm sorry, this thing happens. The tiles on that roof convert smog into inert, benign chemicals. The tiles, there's something in them. And they do it forever. They never wear out. Imagine that, if every roof was like that. We did 3 of these homes. The whole neighborhood was insisting on panels. Couldn't get any more batteries, but we're working on that. They're coming. KB Homes, a few months ago, we had a celebration. Sold their 1,000 homes, the 1,000 one, you know, the one who hits 1,000. That was the celebration. Every home KB sells now, everywhere in the country, solar is an option. And it has 3 steps of options. And if you're going to live in that home, you're insane not to do it. You know, the economics of it are just so superb. That's what we're able to do when we recognize the urgency of it. And, you know, when I started doing this was like the last thing I was going to do. You know, I got cancer, I got heart disease, I had high blood pressure, I weighed 260 pounds. But now I'm doing something that's magnificent. You know, I work out every day. Last thing I want to do is retire. There's this energy that takes hold of everybody doing this. Our city is a total different city in every single way because of this. It creates a sense of community that we never experienced before. And if you can infuse your own communities with this, wow. 96% of municipal buildings, 96% of the energy is solar. You know, we replaced it off the grid. 24%, we did that in 3 years. In the next 3 years, depending on what Edison does, we will be at 100%. And it's all about interconnect at this point, how quickly we can get connected to the grid. We will be 100% net zero. And there is exactly what every other city in the Southwest could do starting tomorrow. But they got to learn. They got to understand it's doable. And they got to understand there is no real political risk. I got reelected with 76% of the vote. I was initially elected with 352 votes. That was a very uncomfortable night. It was that close. But that synergy I'm talking about takes hold. This is nothing to be afraid of. It is something that once they taste it, they'll be hooked. It is that life-changing for your whole community. You know, the key to it is the storage. And I think we've finally overcome that. You know, in the last year, MIT's come out with this molten salt storage. Everywhere I turn, there's more storage availability, different concepts. BYD has opened an electric bus company in the city, and now they've opened I call them energy terminals. We really have to be careful how we talk about it. Why don't you call it a battery? Because batteries die. The framing's bad. So let's just change the framing. They're energy terminals. We're now buying buses that are all electric. And it's really cool because when you pick up people, it charges, I mean, it's magic to me, but you know, it's some kind of conductivity that occurs just by being there. You don't have to hook up. So every time it's picking up people, it's recharging. They can go about 200 miles, just if you have those recharging abilities. I went and bought that Tesla S, you know, the high performance one. I gotta tell you, that car is the most amazing car. I mean, I buy whatever car I want. I have an R8, which is anybody into sports cars? Okay, that's a great car, right, the R8? I haven't driven the R8 since I bought that thing. It is that fast. Handles that well. It's unbelievable. But you know what was more unbelievable to me? The government gave me $25,000 back. How stupid was that? You give the $25,000 to the guy buying the Volt. You know, we really got to make more intelligent decisions. And what we do, you know, in Newport, I have a house there, and everybody's trading in their Ferrari to get one of these things. Because when you hit it, it's instant. It's that fast. When you're going on a roller coaster, you know that feeling you get? I get that in my car. Which is not good because I'm the mayor, you know? What alternative energy is doing for us is opening vistas everywhere we turn. This is the most exciting place to be right now. Unbelievable. But, you know, we're getting awards all over the world. That one was in Austria, so I sent one of the city councilmen to get it. That's the vice mayor in New York. We won the EPA award for the most sustainable city in America. That's pretty cool. I mean, we got 14% unemployment. We're one of the poorest cities in the country. You know, we got huge challenges. But because the community is embracing it, it's really relatively easy. But I want to talk to you about what is confronting us and why this is so serious. Bangladesh is built on an alluvial plain. 80% of it is a few meters above sea level. 80% of it. There are 156 million people living in Bangladesh. There's a lot of South Sea islands, and Australia and New Zealand are actually stepping up and recognizing that these people have to immigrate. Either that or they will die. And Australia is making plans for that. Bangladesh is a different story, and that's just one of the places that we know will disappear. We cannot save Bangladesh. The Holocaust happened not because people couldn't get out of Germany. It's because people could not get in anywhere else. That's why 10 million people died. The only country that took them was China. China took 50,000 German Jews and protected them during the Japanese invasion. Story few people know. That was 50,000 people. And that was a story that needs to be told because of the absolute humongous humanitarian thing that country did. There are 156 million people in Bangladesh. India's solution, they have built the longest fence the world has ever seen. And it is patrolled with soldiers and automatic weapons. It has high intensity lighting on it. And they have made the decision that those people will just have to die. And that is only one country. The disruptions that are facing us, we may not survive. We may not survive. And we are out of time. And this room should be much bigger. But it is what it is. And if this is all we got, it's all we got. But we are in a race to save the planet. Every day you wake up, ask yourself, what am I doing? Am I wasting this day? Because we are out of time. And the creative juices you folks have really could save the planet. Thank you.